And with us now from Bogota, Stephen Grattan. He's co-founder of the Bogota Post, and in Rio, journalist George Powell. Thank you both very much for being with us tonight.
Good evening.
So, George, I'd like to just begin with you. Since this crash early in the morning, a lot of reactions have come in. We know there's 3 days of mourning happening there. Tell us a little bit about what the reactions have been there in Brazil.
Well, the public reaction here, as you can imagine, has been one of shock and disbelief and sadness. Just walking around my local neighborhood here in Rio de Janeiro, the cafes, bars and restaurants today were full of people at lunchtime, all watching the news on the TVs, just trying to process exactly what had happened last night in Colombia.
Stephen, what was the reaction there in Colombia where the crash happened?
Very similar to what George says. I have quite a few Brazilian colleagues working with me here. It's been a sad day, what we've been witnessing. Sad day for Brazil, sad day for Colombia, the world of journalism as well.
Stephen, from what you know, what is the latest we can say on the investigation from Colombian authorities?
There's been a lot of speculation as to the antiquity of the aircraft and the security measures taken. Santos made a statement a few hours ago saying that they're now working alongside the Bolivian authorities to try and get to a more solid conclusion as to what actually happened. But yeah, there's been a lot of speculation as to the antiquity of the aircraft, security measures, and the fact of the fuel problems that they were saying there had been.
George, just how involved is the Brazilian government in this investigation?
Well, I think it's still quite early at this point. So far, I know that Michel Temer, the president, has made a statement issuing his thoughts, prayers, sympathy for the families of the players and the journalists. 3 days of national mourning. But he's also said that the government will be as involved as possible with the investigation, but also in helping the families of those affected by last night's crash.
Stephen, we heard a sort of very honorable gesture coming from the Colombian football club in response to this. Tell us a bit more about that.
I haven't actually heard of that as yet. I think I was
the Colombian football club, so I'll just sort of mention it, saying that Brazil should actually win this title. Clearly a lot of empathy.
There has been a lot. That's another... Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and that has also been another topic on the agenda of what's actually going to happen now with this game.
Is there any sense now of what happens from the football perspective? I mean, what's next?
I haven't actually, to be honest, found out much about that.
George, let's talk about, I mean, this football club. Tell us a little bit about what an up-and-coming team on their way really to accomplish a dream really for the whole country, that dream cut short. Tell us a little bit about what that has meant to the Brazilian people.
Well, I think this team really represented everything that was possible and that was good in sports and in Brazilian football. Here's a team that in 2009 were in the Brazilian 4th division, yet they've made their way right up to the top. Currently was sat in 9th position in the Premiership. So obviously devastating for them. They're on their way to the biggest game in the club's history. Unfortunately, it looks like it will be the biggest day in the club's history, but for all the wrong reasons.
Stephen, and for those survivors, 6 people pulled from the rubble, what do we know about their conditions?
They are with serious conditions in Medellin. We don't have too much information coming out.
All right, it looks like we lost them, but clearly something, both 2 cities dealing with this, both in Brazil and in Colombia, this tragedy. We'll look a little bit closer at the sports part of this story, also a major shock to the football world, as you just heard. Sports reporter Michael Friedman has that story.